Welcome and thanks for tuning in to the Victorian Aboriginal News Van Talks podcast. I'm your host, Charles Pakana.
Victorian Aboriginal News acknowledges and pays respect to traditional owners and custodians across Australia. We acknowledge the elders who have gone before, those who currently lead their communities, and those who will follow in years and generations to come.
This podcast was made possible with support from the Community Broadcasting Foundation. Find out more at cbf.org.au.
Joining me on the program today is Tommeginne man Trent Brickle, the Chair of Kinaway, the Victorian Aboriginal Chamber of Commerce. Trent, thanks for speaking with me today, brother.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Trent, Kinaway's vision is to empower Aboriginal businesses to achieve economic independence. That's pretty much a given. But what's the most significant structural barrier that currently limits the growth of Koori businesses in Victoria? And when we're talking about businesses, we're talking from micro level, 1 or 2 employees, right up to mid and large-scale enterprises.
Excellent question. I think as a business owner myself, I see a structural gap in support between the business concept to business creation. And I think that is a gap that Kinaway can serve a purpose to fill.
So specifically how?
By offering support from Victorian Aboriginal business to be able to shape their business concept, be able to create a business plan, and be able to understand the journey that a business needs to take from concept through to business creation. Because Kinaway really only gets involved when a business is created. So I think that there's lots of missed opportunity in the Victorian Aboriginal business economy where people might have a fantastic idea but don't have the supports in place to be able to take that idea and form it into a business.
Is this something then that Kinaway would look at addressing to extend its mentoring and sponsorship of businesses?
Absolutely. That'd be something that ideally we would love to do in the future and have a coaching or mentoring business support service available to help mob take their concept and turn it into reality.
Obviously, this is something that would have been on the minds of previous chairs and boards of management for quite a number of years. Typically, what's been halting the Kinaway Chamber of Commerce from actually pursuing that and providing that mentorship from idea conception through to business development?
I've been on the board for about 3 years now, and we have talked about it, but our focus areas have been in other parts of the business. So one of the reasons that we haven't sort of filled that gap, I think, in our service provision has largely been driven by our funding direction. So we have been driven into areas by government funding when government have favoured parts of Aboriginal business over others. So, for example, government got very interested in Aboriginal fashion for a while. So a lot of the So a lot of the money that we were receiving, grants that were available were for Aboriginal fashion. Now, what we found as a board was that emphasis on particular industries was driving Kinaway's strategy and operations. So we decided as a board that we would like to become much more self-determined and make sure that we were driving the direction for Aboriginal business based on our membership needs and our membership requirements rather than what was favourable to government or other funding bodies at the time.
I do recall one period of time where there was that focus from Kinaway on fashion. And that's, I believe, when Kinaway was based in the Richmond offices, if I recall correctly. So quite a few years ago, of course.
That's right.
Just how much impact did that focus from the government on fashion have on the general runnings and focus of Kinaway itself? And just what percentage of the funding was intended specifically for fashion?
I can't recall the numbers off the top of my head. I wasn't directly involved then, but it does shift the focus of operations. And that's why over the last 2 or 3 years, the board has moved towards trying to achieve a self-determined funding model. And we've tried various things, and some things have worked and some haven't. So we have implemented the tiered membership model where the businesses that are doing quite well financially can opt to pay a premium membership fee. We've emphasised retaining our relationships with our corporate partners and making sure that those relationships are rock solid to try and retain 100% renewal rate of our existing corporates, but also try and increase our footprint with our corporate partners. And we have changed our funding proposals to government to be much more focused on our membership and where we see operational and functional requirements for our members that need to be met as the certifying body for Aboriginal business on behalf of Victorian Government.
Were there any particular challenges that emerged as a result of trying to achieve that self-determination, especially in the light of government being one of the primary funders? Essentially, what was the fallout that you experienced as a result of essentially saying to the government, look, we're going to determine where this money is going. We don't want to be dictated to by the state government?
It was actually received quite favourably, and hats off to the Kinaway team in that regard to sort of knock on the ministerial office doors and start forming relationships at the ministerial level. And we've obviously got an ongoing great relationship with Aboriginal Economic Development, with him and DJ Sir. So we went to all different levels of government to demonstrate to them the good work that we've been doing, the future direction that we want to go in, and it's actually been received quite favourably.
Let's look now at the businesses themselves. They're not all just the businesses we're commonly familiar with in the streets of Melbourne, but there are rural and regional businesses, and typically rural and regional businesses face different challenges than do those in CBDs. How does Kinaway identify those challenges and those differences in challenges and work with your clients or your members to address them?
This year we've undertaken a series of regional roadshows. So we recognise that that is a service provision gap as well. So this year we planned out a series of regional roadshows to go and talk to our regional businesses in certain areas right across the state, talk to them face-to-face, understand through face-to-face relationship connection what the real challenges are on the ground there. We recognise that regional businesses don't have the access to the Kinaway office like our CBD or closer to the city member businesses do. Ideally, I would love to see the establishment of Kinaway regional hubs out in specific locations across regional Victoria to act as the intermediary between the head office and the regions and make sure that the regional voices are heard through those hubs. And I would love to see that funded through our strategic plan.
Do you see that that could actually be done in partnership with traditional owner groups across Victoria? Because it's in their interest as well.
Absolutely. If we could join forces and have those either use existing locations and venues, gathering places, but actually have some Kinaway funded positions out there that work in conjunction with the Kinaway head office and can act as the flow-through point to really understand what the regional businesses require in the different locations and geographies. And also getting back to this sort of structural gap is providing that support for young businesses or early startup businesses out in the regions that might not have access to the resources that we might have closer to the city, and be able to act as that sort of coaching and mentoring service to get the startups through the business planning process up and to become actual active businesses, and then link them into their first contract, link them into the networking opportunities that Kinaway provide and into our corporate partners.
It sounds, let me be blunt, to be a fairly expensive and ambitious goal to set up these incubator hubs, if you will, and support hubs around the state. You can't surely just be relying on government support for that. Where would you see some of this critical financial support coming from?
Good question. Number one, we want to enshrine this in our new strategic plan so that we've actually got that as a vision. Then once we've got that strategically defined, then we can actually take that to government with a funding proposal. But we may also think about, when you talk about incubators, we might also think about venture capital opportunities. But that all needs to be, number one, enshrined in strategy. Number two, operationalised through management and fully supported through different funding models.
What about partnerships with local chambers of commerce that operate right across the state, and indeed local government authorities?
Absolutely. So there's an opportunity there to tap into the local government procurement policies. In terms of the local chambers, yes, I do see that as an opportunity, but again, it needs to be staffed and supported. So we need to make sure that the ideas that we have and the strategic plan that we put in place can be operationalised and maintained and executed properly with the appropriate reporting mechanisms to make sure that we're delivering value to our members as well.
Okay, let's look now at the contribution that First Nations businesses across Victoria make to the broader community and society. You've got, as I mentioned, over 300 Aboriginal businesses that are members of Kinaway, and there are obviously more businesses out there that are yet to become members. But beyond just job creation, how does the success and growth of First Nations businesses directly translate into genuine political, social and cultural self-determination for Aboriginal Victorians?
I've always talked about Aboriginal businesses changing the conversation at dinner tables from welfare to wealth. That's one of our key visions. I truly believe that, and that's why I truly believe in what Kinaway does, because we create the conditions for those businesses to grow. That's what truly happens within households of these family-run businesses. All of a sudden, you have families that have never had the money to travel overseas. You've never had the money to put the kids into private schools. The conversations at the dinner table turn to management challenges and boards. I remember when I was growing up as a young kid, I didn't even know what a board was. And here I am as chair of the board. But that's because those opportunities weren't available.
Yeah.
And I think that that's where Kinaway can play an extremely important part in Victoria's economic future by making sure that our current businesses are supported, making sure that the businesses that we've got as applying to be members are supported, and making sure that we can adequately support our regional businesses and try and fill this gap that I think exists between business concept and business reality.
What about contribution to the broader Victorian economy? Obviously, it doesn't represent an enormous amount, but I believe that you have some aspirations when it comes to an ultimate figure that you would like to see Victorian Koori businesses by way of contribution.
Oh, absolutely. So last year there was about $600 million spent with Kinaway businesses.
Yeah.
I would love to get that to $1 billion.
How achievable is that? Let me jump in.
I think it is, particularly with policy changes.
Yep.
So at the moment, the Victorian government social procurement framework talks about spend with Kinaway certified businesses or Supply Nation registered or certified businesses. I think we need a policy lever to make sure that we have Kinaway first in terms of Victorian government social procurement. I also think that there's other models that we can look at. So in New South Wales government, they've got in their Indigenous procurement policy for government departments, if they find an Aboriginal business that can deliver a particular service, they can award that Aboriginal business with a $250,000 including GST contract without a market test.
Right.
So if we had that in Victoria, I think that plus a policy lever would go a long way to increasing the spend with our member businesses.
It seems, though, that with an increase in spend, especially under a policy, and a lot of even local governments are experiencing this, where they're trying to implement reconciliation action plans that have a guarantee, let's say arbitrarily, a 5% spend with First Nations businesses. Let's be really frank about it. It's open market for black cladding. Just how real a problem is black cladding here in Victoria? You've got to call it out here. And what do you believe that Kinaway can do by way of addressing it?
Yeah, absolutely. We've seen recent news articles over the last 2 or so weeks that have brought black cladding to the fore.
Yeah.
Yes, it is a problem. Kinaway will be addressing black cladding. We will soon be announcing a membership audit of our businesses to make sure that they meet our constitutional requirements of 51% majority Aboriginal owned and operated. We'll be communicating that out to the members in writing very shortly. We will also be announcing a series of roundtables, inviting our members to join those roundtables to discuss black cladding and what it actually means. And through those roundtables, we'll develop a set of criteria that we will communicate back to the members that we will use to go through and conduct this audit and make sure that our memberships are not blacklighted.
An audit, though, can be mandatory, or it can be voluntary, it can be actually on-site, or it can be via email even. How do you envisage that this will be carried out, given that people will still try to work the system, given there's potentially so much money at stake?
Oh, absolutely. So we can do what we can with the resources that we've got available to us. So Kinaway will conduct an audit with our membership and our resources. We can also use our position with government to influence monitoring mechanisms, I think might be also needed in the future.
As?
Once your contract is awarded by a government agency, then we can then push through contractual obligations, monitoring and reporting requirements of these contracts and appropriate reporting mechanisms back to Kinaway. And so that we can check that once a contract has been awarded to a member business, that it hasn't been subcontracted out. And I understand, I'm a business owner myself, I perform government contracts. In the busyness of day-to-day operations, things can get missed and things can change without appropriate governance mechanisms in place. So I think we've got the opportunity there where it's a multi-layered problem and it probably needs a multi-layered solution. So we can conduct the audit from our perspective, we can influence government to put governance mechanisms in place, and potentially we could influence government to impose financial penalties for those that don't comply, and those financial penalties could go back to Kinaway as a funding mechanism.
You're talking, though, when you speak of government, about state government, I assume.
Yes.
What about local governments? Because as I mentioned before, increasingly local governments are looking to do spending with black businesses. And if we're looking in the regional and rural Australia, where we've identified already there is a need for more spending, how then do we roll out such policies and measures to the local government authorities?
Good question. I think the only thing that we could do at the moment is influence. But again, this supports our strategic position around this regional representation from Kinaway across the state, where we can use those resources and create the relationships with the member businesses, with the local traditional owner groups, with the local councils or government, local businesses, chambers, to show them the benefit of spending money with Aboriginal businesses and to influence policies at the local level.
Let's look ahead 5 years. And you've talked about some aspirational stuff about the incubator hubs and the support mechanisms in regional area, about policy changes. If we do look ahead, where do you want, or where do you even see the Victorian Aboriginal business sector to be in terms of scale, sectoral diversity, which is an important thing because we've seen over the years that Aboriginal businesses aren't just about selling art and T-shirts.
Absolutely.
It's really into the big time things. And the sector's influence on state economic policy.
I'll start at the policy level first. So I would love for Kinaway, as the peak body for Aboriginal business in Victoria, to be the first port of call for government when it's thinking about policy reform or refinement, to come directly to us, which I think we're starting to build that relationship at the ministerial level, which is fantastic. In sectorial, I think we've got about 40 different industries represented across our member base at the moment. So I think that will continue to grow. I think what we need to do is promote that a lot more. So I had a meeting earlier today with a Victorian government agency. They were thinking about Aboriginal products and services, as you mentioned, in terms of fashion, arts and craft, Sunday market type stuff, right? And I said, no, like we have so much more than that. At Kinaway, we have a variety of corporate services available. We have a variety of, construction services available. We have a variety of retail services available. And all of those sectors need to be adequately represented. And we need the spend to be dedicated into those areas where they might be struggling, particularly our retail sector.
What about a call to action? We'll leave it with this, but a call to action for the broader Victorian community when it comes to voting with its wallets, if you will, and considering First Nations businesses, whether it's from the local gardening supplier right up to construction.
The call to action is use Kinaway as the peak body, use our directory to understand where Aboriginal businesses deliver products and services that you might require. So the business directory is there. All you need to do is search for a keyword, and the search results will show you all the businesses that are associated with those keywords, and they've got contact numbers there, and you can go and buy direct from them.
Trent Brickle, Chair of Kinaway Aboriginal Chamber of Commerce in Victoria, thanks for your time.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me.
For a full transcript of this interview, visit the Victorian Aboriginal News website at vicaboriginalnews.com.au. Until our next episode, stay safe and stay informed.